And just to put a plug on, for those who are interested in building on this, we are very keen to connect with others to build a larger community of people who are wanting to solution around how do we reclaim our power in what is evolving as a very disempowering system. So thanks very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sifo, for that fantastic introduction. And for those, of course, who didn't know what Tekano is about, as well as Amandla.mobile, you've heard. So look them up. You literally have a library in your hands. Now, all three of you come from humanities, and yet here you are. As a person from the humanities, I tend to find technology very scary. How did you get into it? Mamutingo, maybe you start us off.
Hi everyone, dumelang le kae? Thokozani, siyachama kusha. Thokoz. So my journey is actually a pretty funny story, right? Um, I've always loved mathematics, right?
Wait, you did journalism.
I'm getting there. Yeah, told you, funny story. So I've always loved maths in high school, and I've always thought I was going to be this mathematician who's going to win the world's first, the first queer black woman Fields medal. I still have a chance because nobody has won it yet. So, exactly. And then because of my autism and ADHD, I was very terrible at social cues in high school. And so I decided that, well, I went to Rhodes, university currently known as Rhodes, to study a BSc in computational mathematics. And then a very terrible thing happened to me in Rhodes, hashtag are you reference lists, exactly. And so I dropped out. And then I figured, well, I'm just gonna go do something that can teach me how to communicate with people, because autism makes you kind of really bad at that. So then I actually shadowed a lady called Karabo Khuleng at 702, and I was like, this looks so cool. What did you study? So you talk on radio? And she's like, oh, I did journalism. And then I applied for journalism and medicine because my mom wanted me to be a doctor. And then I got my medicine offer letter first. I hid it. And then she paid for the registration fee for journalism. And then I was like, hey, it's non-refundable. so that's how I got into journalism. And then for tech, when I left the humanities and worked in digital marketing, I spent a lot of my time playing video games. And one of my favorite games, Need for Speed Most Wanted, 2009. Yes. So my alias is always Barbie, and my cars are always pink. But there's always a white man driving my car. So that kind of pissed me off. So I went into YouTube to try and find like cheat codes for the game. Like how in GTA you have cheat codes? Yeah, and then I didn't find them. And then I found an 18-hour tutorial on how to build my own video game, so I did. That's how I got into tech. Yeah.
And Melissa, journalism, then
Yeah.
how?
Is this on? Good. My story is a lot less interesting, I would say. Might I say, your
All
question...
stories are interesting. It just depends on the writer.
That's fair. But might I say that the reason the tech world is the state it is now is because humanities was not in the room when they were creating the technologies.
Facts.
So we should be there. Tech and humanities go together because they don't understand the world. We understand the world. So my story is similar. I also went to Rhodes. I studied journalism. I wanted to be a journalist, a war journalist. For that, I don't know why, but it was the dream at that time. But then I got, I don't know, disillusioned with the practice of journalism. It felt like I was just following around white men, then telling me their stories, no offense. Their stories about how they're, doing these great things in South Africa, and I was bored. I was really, really bored with the job. And then I got an opportunity to work at Wits University, basically studying media innovation and civic tech in Africa. And that's how I entered the world, because I was trying to figure out how are Africans using technology for governance and democracy. And then I entered the world of participatory democracy, which is how do we make democracy actually participatory, not just like elections and then we're done. Democracy does not just do the 4-year elections. There's more in between those. So that's kind of where I function. I'm like, okay, how do we use technology? But also, how can we make sure that technology does not harm our democracy? So that's where I swim. That's where I'm comfortable.
Fantastic. Michael, over to you. What
Okay,
got you into tech?
Okay, so I had a computer when I was young, so I was lucky. I'm from the United
you were
States.
taking New Heaven.
Yeah. So then I was a basketball player like Precious.
I
right?
actually
Yeah.
actually just came
Yeah.
back from a game and we're winning.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. And so if you met me during like my high school days, like Mike is a basketball player, was it. And but then when I was a senior in high school, my older brother, was in uni, and he came across politics stuff, and I wanted to be like my older brother. Through the Rage Against the Machine reading list, which put free books online, and there I discovered Noam Chomsky, anarchism, and those kinds of things. And then when I got into uni, I took that up. And then my best friend growing up, he was a computer programmer. So I tuned him into that. And then he got into the free and open source software movement, which is about ownership and control of computers. So from that point on, this is now like around 2006, I want to say, I was tuned into tech politics. I did my undergrad women's studies master's degree, and then for PhD I applied into Rhodes University, and I actually was there probably at the same time you were. Were you there with Fismas Fa?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. You were there too, all of us.
That audition.
You know what a rubber bullet feels
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, so we were all at UCAR, and during that time period, I decided I wanted to do tech politics for my dissertation, and I went, because you have to specialize, so I went with education technology, because the ANC said they're going to put tablets in all the schools. And then everybody laughed, right? Everybody was like, why are you laughing? And they're like, Mike, come on. During that time period, I realized that all the big tech corporations were trying to get in on this. So you have your Microsoft. Google was, kind of waiting it out because there's not enough internet. Their stuff is mostly online. Pearson, which is UK-based. And then this theme in the dissertation evolved to the question of the Global South and imperialism, colonialism, and that's when I went into the topic. It just kind of grew organically out of the investigation into this idea of digital colonialism. And I pretty much have been on that topic ever since.
Start with you, Mike, again. Come this way. What is the most common fear or mistake or misunderstanding people, in your opinion, who you encountered, have about technology and the digital world?
You want me to
You're
go
all
first?
getting the same question.
Okay, that people have, it depends on the people, right? I think sometimes people accept it uncritically and they think, fear of missing out, or we have to make sure that we don't fall behind. On the flip side of it, there's this kind of maliciously imperialist digital justice movement in the United States that is basically either erasing, trivializing, or appropriating. And when I say appropriating, not because they're choosing to discuss it, but because they're using Global South causes in a way that's not actually challenging power, but to check a box. So on the flip side, you have a lot of critics that are then pulling from those figures as the icons in literature and places to try to understand this topic. So it depends on which audience.
Okay, so probably I'm talking about our type of audience. You are in South Africa right now. You've been in South Africa. You've met people perhaps when you're playing basketball, you've met people, new students, when you're a researcher at UJ, when you say, oh, I am this doctor and my specialty is the digital world, technology, etc. What do they say? What are the, oh my God, so can you tell me about AI? What do they say? What is the most common misconception?
Misconception? Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest this time. Like me first, I would say like, I don't find most people actually thinking very much about it. But I would say, I guess you could say like maybe AI with jobs or deep fakes or something like that. Yeah.
What do you, yeah.
I think in my work, I find that people think technology is a solution. So, for example, if our democracies are failing, people think, oh, you can just embed technology and that will fix it. If we are going through corruption, people are saying, oh, let's just put this tech tool in it. That's not how technology works. Technology is defined by many things, like who designs it, who builds it, who uses it, and all of this. And if we put it in our African democracies, I don't think we should be viewing it as a solution. It's a tool that we can use for various reasons. That's why people can use it for bad. That's why people can use it for good. But it's not the solution to our social problems in our society anyway. Actually, in some cases, it's the problem, and we need to address that, so.
Who has watched a movie where robots turn against humans and start shooting them? Right? Yes, so that's the biggest misconception I always come across, that at one point in time, all these robots that we're building are just going to and then then they take over the world, yada, yada, yada. And you know what? People are partially not wrong about that. You know why? Because of the people we are allowing to build those systems,
yes.
Right? So the work that I do, right, I always question, before I question what the system is used for, right? I question who coded that legacy code,
yes.
Right? So if you're going to build, I'll make an example with a very popular app, Be My Eyes, an app that assists visually impaired people, with volunteers that help them recognize things, right? When you look at who built that app, there's not one visually impaired person that built that app. When you look at the audience that tested the app, there's not one visually impaired African person that tested that app. And that's where the problem is, right? That's how it's going to take us over, because we have the power to build those systems. And if we allow the wrong people to build them, definitely those robots are going to turn around and gaga. Yes.
Perhaps before you go, and you've just sort of touched on this, but maybe you can expand. What exactly, to the uneducated like myself, what is digital colonization? What does that mean? How does that affect us? What should we watch out for?
Okay, I like using scenarios because, ADHD. So I think for me, it all comes down to, yes, technology has power, but who gives it the power, right? And, for instance, I wasn't there, but I'm assuming we used to fight with spears back in the day, when I wasn't even a concept yet. And then there were guns, but who was behind the guns? Who made the guns? What did they use the guns for? And that's how, the colonization of, gun usage and violence came about. And it's the same with technology, right? It's a tool, yes, right? So who builds the tool and what do they use it for, right? So for instance, I can ask anyone right now to go onto their WhatsApp Meta and Google lesbian warrior. I can bet you it's probably going to be a redhead. I can bet you, like a Viking or something, you understand? You know why? It's because of the preconceived ideas and, the mindsets of the people that hard-coded that tool itself, right? And so that's what we need to watch out for, is who are we allowing to build those tools? And I guess that's where we also come in, because, my team will tell you, I don't allow anyone that, isn't going to be affected by an outcome of a certain app to contribute to it. You understand? If I'm building an app for deaf people, I need deaf people in the room building with me. Yes, it's fine. It's fine for you to not know how to code. I'll do the coding, but you must tell me what to code because you're the one that needs to know, what's needed there. And so if we allow, colonists, to build the tools that are supposed to be meant for us, that's where it goes wrong completely.
Is it the same question for me?
No. Michael, you have talked about, you have written, in fact, about digital degrowth. For a lot of people, they don't know what that is. In fact, I didn't know what it was until I read your book. What is, to the uninitiated, what is digital degrowth?
Okay, so I guess you can start with the idea of degrowth itself. So it's not a new idea. It goes back to the 70s, but because it's about the environment and the limited amount of resources that humans can use sustainably without starting to exceed planetary boundaries. And if you look over the last decade or so, there's been a wealth of scientific studies that have shown that if we want to effectively deal with the triple crisis of climate change, which is about overheating the planet, biodiversity loss, which is about species extinction, population declines within species, and habitat destruction, and pollution, then our best bet for a low-risk scenario is to reduce the amount of material resources that are being used, possibly by as much as 1/2. Now, if you look at this issue, it's taken a kind of anti-imperialist, anti-colonial turn because who consumes all the resources and who built their societies consuming this finite amount of resources. Now, if you look at the climate crisis, by about mid-century, so maybe late 2050s, early 2060s, we're on a trajectory to be about 2 degrees above the pre-industrial level. And at that point, several major tipping points, which are environmental catastrophes where if you want to think of falling, if you're standing up and you're falling backwards, at a certain point in time, you can't get back up, even though you didn't hit the ground yet. So a number of major tipping points will go from possible to likely. And so examples of tipping points would be the Amazon rainforest, tipping into a dry savanna, or the mass bleaching of the coral reefs, which are home to about 1/4 of all marine life. So if you don't want to do this, and we really don't want to do it, at a 3% global growth rate, you're doubling the amount of material resources you're using every 23 years. And so if we're at 100 billion tons aggregate material resource use, now you're going to go to 200 and then to 400. And there's just not enough time to keep growing the global economy. And so at that point, if you want to play it safe, we actually need to cut back, so reduce and cap, which then creates a really serious problem. First of all, what do you do with inequality? All right, because now you have finite resources. How much is there actually to go around? If you look how much there is to go around, we're talking about a little over $20,000 per head for 8 billion people. And so if you break it down and you get around purchasing power and so on, there's really not enough room for class. So now you're looking at, if you're reducing and capping, a just degrowth transition, you're looking at basically a revolutionary movement because you can't lock people into poverty like that. So this is something that's kind of a small academic phenomenon. It's not really that present in environmental movements, and there's not a lot of time for that. So digital degrowth contextualizes the digital economy to this phenomenon because at the end of the day, you can't burn the walls of your house to keep yourself warm, and the environment is a box we have to all fit in. So briefly, it starts, I wrote a book about it, and I started off with digital colonialism. The United States has 4% of the world's population, about a third of the wealth, and about a half of the financial assets. And your tech giants are now at the helm of that. So this unequal exchange and division of labor and concentration of resources, which is incompatible with the just degrowth transition, is now basically undermined by these big tech corporations. So that's first and foremost, and if you're going to then extend beyond that, you can look at the digitalization of capitalism, including things like industrial agriculture, the integration of big tech into modern militaries. Everybody, I'm sure, is aware now that AI is being used in Gaza, it's been used in Venezuela, it's being used in Iran. There's no such thing as a modern military without cloud computing and without your big tech giants. So that also goes into this, because if we're going to mass redistribute wealth and power within and between countries, you're going to face the guns of the Americans and their allies. So basically, it's just a snapshot picture of the world, or a framework to conceptualize tech politics. And going back to the imperialist American intellectual class, I mean, I was at Yale Law School as a visiting fellow for 8 years. They won't talk about this stuff. A lot of them are aware of my work. They'll just freeze it out. I don't want to personalize it, but nobody will also talk about this issue straight. So we have a situation in which this conversation needs to be had, and needs to be had fast, because it's got to also move beyond conversation to implementation.
Melissa, Michael has talked about degrowth and how there's all this inequality. How do we then get into a space where we democratize? How do we say, for instance, say to Dangote or Motsepe or, Lonscam or whoever, how do we say to them, listen, you have too much. And you need to stop, because you need to share with other children. How do we get into where we can have digital democratization that can assist not just the people in this room, but the old woman in the village, the man with his family in the desert, and so forth and so on, like beyond? How do we do that? Is there a way to do that? Is that possible?
Wow. First of all, abolish all billionaires.
Yes.
Yes.
Billionaires shouldn't exist.
First of all, yes. But can I start off my answer from your question to her about digital colonization? So from my work, when it comes to digital democracy and how I think about it, digital colonization has to do with the lack of data sovereignty when it comes to African countries. Data extraction. We don't have much of control when it comes to the big tech companies that come into our countries. For example, if Facebook were to do something wrong in this country, it's very difficult for us to hold them accountable, because they can technically say, well, we're not registered in South Africa, we're not a South African company. So there's all these little issues, but big issues, and when African countries try to hold them accountable, what do? They find a new African country to move their offices to. They did that in Kenya, they did that in Ghana. So anytime lawyers say, hey, your content moderation rules are actually harming Africans, they move, because they know we don't have the funds to actually go to California and hold them accountable for what they're doing on an African soil, right? So for me, that's got to do with it. And then there's the labor part of it, which is how all this AI, which is why I'm deeply uncomfortable with the way everyone's like, oh yay, AI, let me just use it to build a caricature. An African person, an Indian person had to sit and watch a lot of horrible content, moderating it so that we know what's legally allowed on platforms. They don't get paid. They get paid like $1 per day for this work. So they're extracting a lot of African labor. They don't follow our rules. They don't care for our rules, really. And I'm not naming any names,
It's okay, you can name them, we know them.
And then there's the big thing with our governments. They don't actually do their part in regulating these organizations and holding them accountable. So we don't even own our own data. A lot of African data, our healthcare data, our citizenship data, is taken from African, and it's in where? Like Asian
California,
countries,
whatever.
it's not here. But if you look at the EU, they don't do that in the EU because the EU has the regulation. They know the EU will take them to the courts. Why don't we do that? Where are our governments? Why are they not doing their jobs? We pay money in taxes and all of this so that they can do their part. And it's not like we lack the people. We have the capacity, we have the knowledge. We have people in our communities, especially in this room, who know what to do, who know the legal ways, who know what's good for our communities. Why are the government not using us?
Well, I think perhaps there is a thing that a lot of you are just clever blacks in this room, and you're not a critical mass for the government. So how do we get to that critical mass space where so many more people know about it and they push back and they say, we don't want this and you're not going to do this to us. And if you do this, we're not voting for you, type of thing. How do we get to that space? I think that's what I'm curious about.
I think we need to get the right people in the offices. I think people in government, not all of them go with I want to be a civil servant, I want to do this. Some of them are there just because it's a job. They don't really care to the extent that a lot of the people in this room care. And a lot of us can't enter into these government spaces. We could try capacitating them and supporting them where possible, but that's not effective because we are just patching all these little issues. We're not actually solving the real issue, which is our governments are being inefficient. They're sleeping on the job when it comes to our digital future. We need stronger governance when it comes to the digital technologies that are brought into our countries, the kinds of data that's leaving our countries. We have all these great laws, especially South Africa. South Africa is perfect when it comes to coming up with laws and stuff, but we don't implement them. They are just there, a document that we don't actually put into good use. So I want to get better people into government. And I'm happy to support government, but I think for a lot of, I don't know if it's easy for anyone here in this room to get into government and support them. They need to open the doors and let us support them. And they also need to be open to the idea that they're being ineffective. They need to figure out better ways to protect themselves, because it's a security issue, national security issue. They're just taking our data and putting it in Singapore, in the US. It's my data. I should have access to that data, but I don't. Google might have access to it, though, and I can't do anything about it. So I don't know what the easy solution is, but we do need better leaders that are committed to actually acting on our behalf. And we need better channels to hold them accountable. So it can't just be like you are in office and then we don't check up on you. We need ways where we can say, you promised that you would do this. Have you done it? If you haven't, why didn't you do it? We need these checkpoints, and we do, but I think they keep us outside. And I'm a girl who grew up in Diepsloot. I'm from the township, so I don't want to be a clever black or anything, but I feel like we need better leaders, and I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. Our leaders are not representing us well. Like when it comes to the AI framework that South Africa developed last year, there was a lot of lobbying from US companies. They were in these rooms basically saying, yeah, no, this rule will not be great for us, we'll lose money. And they are listening to these people. But there's a whole lot of South Africans in the room that are telling them, hey, if you don't actually regulate this technology, you're gonna harm South Africans. But they're getting money. So are they gonna listen to us? So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I would like maybe the audience, someone smarter than me, please give me the answer as well.
Can I?
One thing.
I just want to youth bust a bit. So, I work as a data security engineer, right? That's my specialty. So what I do is I make sure that the data of South Africans is safe and secure and not sold to third parties without them knowing and understanding what they're signing off, right? So, who has contributed to a white paper before? Great. Who has contributed to the Cyber Crimes Act white paper? Exactly. So this is the answer. Active citizenship, right? the beautiful thing about our constitution, like you say, is that we actually hold the power, right? Yes, I don't know what the term clever flex means. I'm not going to use that. It sounds weird. But we actually hold the power, right? And we saw through a Cyber Crimes Act that we are now fighting to implement, right? I'll tell you one thing, right? Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud Platform and Microsoft Azure have data centers in South Africa where they host South African data. It doesn't go to Silicon Valley. It stays in the country. It is not allowed to cross the borders because of the GDPR policy as well, right? Because you know what we did? From the POPI Act, we tightened our data protection policies through the Cyber Crimes Act. If they move that data out of the country, they get 8 years in jail, no negotiation. Right? I mean, unless, of course, the cops are doing weird things or the magistrate. Yeah, that's another problem. That's another problem. Yeah, your magistrate say another problem. But that's a law that was passed that we have as part of our constitution right now. And I think what's important now is I have never met any other data security engineer in my career in the tech industry. So that's where I come in, is I need more people like me who are going to hold the big corporates accountable. And that's also still part of actors and citizenship, because you go to Diepsloot and you're like, hey guys, there's more careers out there other than accounting, medicine, law, engineering, yeah, you understand? And you call us and we go there, you understand? I mean, I always tell my team that if you feel you have an audience in your hood that needs to hear from us, just tell them we're coming, we'll be there. Where we get the funds, we'll see Pambil, it's fine, we'll sleep in the car. You know what I mean?
Guys,
But
in the
yeah.
interest of active citizenship, anybody who's interested, can we have a note paper and what you call it, and we can have Mama to you? Like, really, I'm serious. Can we get it somewhere there? And whoever needs to have her in the neighborhood, we actually do that.
Yes, I'm here afterwards. Yeah, but yeah, that's where we are now. Another thing that's really missing. I always tell my team that we have enough software engineers in the country. There's too many. Ne? In a team that I consult with right now, we are short of 14 senior data scientists. You understand? That's a big gap, And the beautiful thing about the tech industry is if you start now, you can be a senior in 3 years. If you push and start now. Exactly. And I will, And another thing that we're missing are lawyers that specialize in tech, in tech disputes, right? So the tech policies and AI policies and data collection policies and stuff like that. That's important. For instance, I'm gonna ask you this, and I'm sorry to the team of Tekano, who signed a POPI consent form for these cameras today? Okay, but here's the thing. Did you read the terms and conditions when you got your ticket? You didn't. So do you see where the gap is? It's there in the fine print. We just need to read it. When you sign up on TikTok, when you sign up on TikTok, they updated their data collection policies. Read those things. Unfortunately, yes, we don't have time, special, I beef with it so much, Special apartheid is making us wake up at 4 and go to sleep at 9, I understand. But, these are the things that we're trying to bring to our communities to be like, when you are on Zoom, having a Zoom meeting, don't have a Zoom meeting about an idea that you haven't protected as intellectual property or as a patent. Yeah. Because Zoom owns that idea just by virtue of you talking about it on Zoom. Do you understand? So we're here, we're willing to help, help you understand everything that you're signing up for, and help you see that you actually hold it in your hands to hold these people accountable. And you can actually also just test them. Just if you're bored, contact Google and tell them you want your data for the last 5 years. Yeah, and if they don't give you, you can open a case if you want. You understand? I swear, guys, literally. You can just do that. I know activists can mobilize very quickly. Yeah. Yeah, just test them. Yeah.
Michael,
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to come across as going against my co-panelists. But I will say, if these are modern day East India companies, get the fuck out, right? I mean, you know, right? And we don't want to, a regulated empire is still an empire.
Yes. True.
We don't look to, I mean, I wasn't here. I understand the sensitivities of saying this as a white guy from America, but I would imagine people wouldn't want to say we want to hold the apartheid masters accountable. We want to dismantle that system, right? So, and I know we're all in agreement on this. The thing about data, right? Like it does, and this is why I say like, going back to the United States and like this digital justice narrative. I mean, I've met many of the people who are the big names. I've sparred with them. They play dirty. I know the lineage of these ideas, right? So like I wrote an article, I'll just give an example, called the Microsoft Police State, which I think it was 2020, it was during Black Lives Matter. And I exposed like a shit ton of stuff Microsoft was up to. Some of it was through interviews with police departments. Some of it was just sitting there on the internet. And now you have to look at the lineage. Like, so if you're really deep in a topic and you're looking at dominant ideas, you say, where do these ideas come from, right? And then you start finding dominant institutions. And you say, well, where do they get their money from, right? So if we were in the, earlier the conversation about free and open source software. Now they had some deficiencies, but they were picked up, this idea that the one who can, which becomes more complicated now in the age of AI and data, but the one who controls the code controls the computer experience, and if somebody else controls the code, meaning not code, not the public, then the one who controls the code controls you through the code, right? Because they determine what your computers can and cannot do. That idea was basically the foundation of digital justice. Then along came Microsoft, and there's an institution called Data and Society, headed up by Dana Boyd. Eventually, Kate Crawford is another one, Microsoft researcher. These are people getting like probably about $300,000–400,000 a year, all right? And they start showering money, and then they turn the conversation into big data. So it was basically about, it's taking away from they shifted the conversation from who owns and controls our devices to what are we going to do about big data, all right? And so they took as granted that all this data collection is going to be going on in the first place. And then they start talking about regulation. After Data and Society is formed, I think it was 2011, then eventually you have NYU, you have Microsoft Research in New York City, you have Cornell Tech, and then AI Now. And AI Now was headed up by Kate Crawford and Meredith Whittaker, who was at Google at the time. So fast forward to now, I criticize them for this stuff in the article. Well, what do? They send me, is at The Intercept, they send me and The Intercept a private little email, and they say, we take offense to the article you just ran. Now, keep in mind, right? This is in the middle of Black Lives Matter uprisings. And this is like, Microsoft is knee deep in with the police, right? Like knee deep. And that's in their own city. They're powering their surveillance network, which is like Boomcam, but basically in New York City, right? And all of them, after I published the article, they went silent. They went silent. None of them shared it on Twitter. Sophia Noble, who wrote Algorithms of Oppression, was supposed to contribute a chapter and I put out on Cambridge, ghosted me, all right? All these people went silent because I dared to criticize their leaders, right? So these narratives about this data centrism, I mean, look, at the end of the day, yeah, data is a big deal, and exfiltration of data, ownership of data is a big deal. But it's the entire digital, ecosystem. They own the platforms. They own the semiconductors. All of these multi-billion-dollar physical data centers. What are we going to do with all this now? They own it, right? You're going to appropriate it. You're going to say, oh, this Microsoft data center. I mean, like, what are we going to do about it now that they have it here, right? So I've been like in the global conversation. I've pretty much been the only one who has been saying like, yo, U.S. empire has got to stop. Fuck these data centers. Before any environment stuff was coming up with them, anything like that, completely frozen out, all right? And so I think the issue is we have to get unrealistic because of this environmental issue. We don't have time. So, you know, if we're going to look at this question of inequality that you were asking as well, I mean, looking for effective ways to look at the picture, but basically we're saying this is a zero-sum game, right? You have an equality line. What's the equality line? Okay, here it's like, what, 120K per head, which is below the global average, right? The global average would be, like I was saying, 20K, so maybe like 400K head, whatever, something like that, right? Okay, as soon as some people have more, other people by definition have less, right? So why aren't we, this is, to me, has been normalized. I was kind of disappointed when I came to Joburg because in UJ, it's like, yo, like, it's just so sterile, right? Like, it's, you know, you go from the CBD to Melville, and you're like, what the fuck, right? Like, why isn't people, like, running around like, yo, pandemonium, like, I don't know, like, this is crazy, right? So I understand nobody likes it. But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, if we're looking at the digital domain, and then on top of it, we have the startup sector, and what do they do in the startup sector? They follow the Silicon Valley blueprint, by and large, right? So there's people, oh, we see that they're doing this surveillance-based advertising. We can create a digital marketing firm too, and we could do the same thing too here, and maybe we'll get bought up and we'll become millionaires or rand billionaires here. And, you know, the government here, so I just want to go to the state, right? I don't know. I mean, I believe in pressuring the state, but the state is an elite institution. It's a small minority of the population. It has way more power than everybody else. And I think that this really at root here, we have an unequal division of labor where we have professional intellectuals, of which I'm one. But the more I look at it, the more I say, why do we have like less than 1% of the population thinking about what's good for everybody else, right? So I think, you know, trying to push, yes, we have to contend with the state. We have to pressure the state. And I'm not saying don't look at regulations and things like that, right? But the point is there needs to be an explicit, very radical agenda. And we, I think, need to be trying to develop communal self-governance, which means reducing the sharp division of labor where you have some people who are stocking shelves all day and 12 hours of labor, and then what are they gonna do? Go home and read a book, right? So I think, you know, the point here is that the talking points about data, about regulation, about all these kinds of things, this is what you'll see on the America side of things, right? But really, we have to, I think, use this, you know, the name in South Africa to push back and get in their face and be like, yo, your empire sucks and it's got to end. And y'all need to oppose this. And me, on my side of things, you know, I got frozen out. So I can't do it myself, right? I've tried, but, you know, I'm hoping that others will also begin to see this and kind of join up together and push back on that.
You do.
Love it.
You know, I really appreciate what you just said, Mike. I think, you know, we might somewhat get a little breathless, like, where do we start? Because we know for a fact that the United States of America as empire really, like, has protectionist policies to protect not just, to protect not the American people, but to protect American capitalism. Yeah. So, and this is where we have a situation where to most of the people, you know, they will say something like, oh, you know, there's, the Chinese companies are taking over a lot of things, yet we know that China has a very small share, you know, compared to the number of people that China actually has. So I'm wondering, like, how do we push back on empire without being bombed?
Let's bomb them back.
Tell us.
Touch wood, eh? Touch wood or
No, I mean, I'm thinking that
don't.
all
Fine,
of
I
us-
can build the drones.
We should have pulled in Iran and just had underground
real.
bunkers since.
No, I can build the drones and then, she'll deploy and,
All right, Melissa.
My solution is not so radical, but I'm not against it. But okay. So in my day job, what I do is I support people and organizations around the world to plan and implement participatory democracy in various topical things like climate democracy. So how do you make decisions about climate issues in your community? Digital democracy is one of them. Then there's mainstreaming participation. So like, you've been doing all these little participation things. How do you actually institutionalize that? And a whole bunch of other things. And now, part of my job was doing a digital democracy accelerator. And we only managed to find a funder to fund a cohort for Europe. We've been trying for years to fund one for the Global South, mostly Africa, and because we have a lot of African interest. So what they would do in these accelerators is we select organizations that are interested in digital democracy. They want their communities involved in making decisions. For example, if we're drawing up if we want to revise the Cyber Act or something, citizens should be involved in that, right? So what we do is we train organizations in how they do that, and then they go off and implement it. They do either citizen assemblies, where you get randomly selected citizens to participate in decision-making about, okay, the city of Cape Town wants to put surveillance things in our community. Are we for it? Do we understand it? What's our decision, Or there's a new policy for AI. Do I know it as a regular citizen? How will it affect me and my community? How will it affect my job, my daily life, all of this, right? So the goal is to get citizens, like she was saying, engaged and in decision making, not just like engaged in like a survey where you're like, okay, I'm for this policy. No, actually engaged in the policy making process, digital policy making, right? You sit in these rooms with the community members, you argue until you get consensus and you vote. It's not just, it shouldn't be just these big tech organizations, lobbyists, and government in these rooms, and experts making, the rules, this is the law. Citizens should be in there. But we need organizations that are dedicated to it, and people that are willing to fund it. So if you know Mutsepe, if you know Dangote,
You think Msepe will fund that?
please, someone come fund me. I will do this.
Let me
because-
tell you that. Mina, I like dropping names. Me, I drop names. Mutsepe has once funded a hackathon that he still hasn't paid the prizes to. So Tommy, no. Right.
Anyone in the room with money,
Must
come
see
fund.
again. Let's leave it.
All right, we've got 30 minutes left, so I am gonna open up to the audience, and you can ask questions to my panelists, or maybe you can enlighten us on how we democratize this digital world without losing our souls and becoming, we've been slaves for a very long time, but without becoming even greater slaves now to rock and the robots.
Wow, yeah, this is exciting. Thank you, guys. The energy, the intelligence, the weight of what we have, of who we have on the stage is tremendous. Very exciting, and for it to come from African people is just next level. I also don't want us to be naive, in terms of what we're up against. My name is Anthony Williams. I'm from an organization called IFNAS, Indigenous First Nation Advocacy South Africa. So much of our work, and I'm going to talk about the intersection with what it is that we do and what you guys are doing. Our focus is particularly on critical transition minerals. Now you can already see the intersection, So we just launched in Harare about 3 weeks ago an organization called Pamoja Critical Minerals Alliance. These are frontline communities across Africa. And so the idea is particular around How do we secure the critical transition minerals which is flowing out of the country on a daily basis? When you just go to an area in Kathu where I work extensively, Kathu is in the Northern Cape, and you see the amount of raw minerals that is leaving the country on a daily basis, it is scary. And the people who live around there, those people don't even have water. And I'm talking about massive, massive loads of iron ore. And in critical minerals, you know that South Africa has got more than 80% of the world's manganese deposit is in that area there. And manganese, for those of us who might not know, manganese is used in your solar panel, it's used in your wind turbines, it's used in your EV cars, it's used in your EV batteries, and so we can go on. And we do not understand what it is that we're dealing with. And so what you guys are doing and the work that we're doing, we think that we need to find one another so that people like yourselves with that kind of creativity, how do we take what you do and what we do is, how do we educate the rest of community? I'm actually glad that there's some of our older folk here, who is important that we have this discussion and that we understand that we're selling out our raw materials without locally beneficiating it. If we can just understand the raw material that is going out there, and if we can beneficiate it here, the amount of jobs that we can create here just by that. All of that raw material, the copper that's going out there, out of the country without locally beneficiating it, you're sending out jobs. And that's where you guys are coming in, and your tech savviness. How do we bring that together so that we can make sure that we don't lose our sovereignty? We don't lose the data sovereignty. But maybe lastly, chairperson of the session, lastly is we must be aware that Europe has got a policy on Africa again, and how they are going to, the European Union came in 2025 in October. Do you know that the European Union signed with South African government on raw materials, how to secure more raw material to the tune of 12 billion euros. And this is not sponsorship. These are loans that the future children will have to pay somewhere down the line. And we are not awoke. We're sleeping while all of this is happening around us. We wrote to the European President, Ursula, and we got a response. So we are now busy engaging them, because we cannot be that African people once more is going to lose our sovereignty. Thank you very much, colleagues. Yeah.
So this discussion has left me so scared. Anyway, what is digital democracy? You know, in the age of proliferation of tech oligarchs, you know, the growth of this digital age has given us tech oligarchs. You know, I try to listen to interviews, and I was listening to these tech oligarchs at the World Economic Forum. They say they want to target children openly. Now, in our country, what do we do with our children? I think for me, that's the greatest concern. Every time you see a university running, one sees Microsoft running courses for small and micro businesses. Microsoft, you know, what interest do they have in growing micro businesses here? They don't. How do we address those at that very level? For me, that's my question. And how do we do it?
Do any of you want to answer?
I'll answer her. So I think I'll attend to Uma's question, because I'm always advocating for us to get those certifications. And the reason for that is because, number one, Abazal, you have such smart kids. They just don't have access. And so what we do, right? a few of the people in the Black tech community, what we do is we take those Microsoft AWS resources, the certification, and especially because most of them can't fund it, and we use them to teach people that don't have access to digital literacy exactly what happens, in our tech world, right? And then once that's, happening simultaneously, then, we bring in the idea of inclusivity, the idea of accessibility, the idea of building for yourself, right? Because, one of the greatest things to come out of this country is a large language model called Lelapa AI. And what it does is it realized that, your Google Cloud platform, your Geminis, your GPTs, your DeepSeeks are doing all of this, large language modeling that aren't very Africanized, and obviously they own all the rights to it. So what Lelapa AI did is it took a bunch of researchers who went through that process of your Microsoft certifications and whatnot, and came together and built a large language model that only works with African languages. The Ku language can be recognized with Lelapa AI. So what that means, is when I take my phone and I say, Siri, call Ntando Yenkosi, ne? Siri is going to pronounce it as Ntando Yenkosi, not Ntando Yenkosi, That's what Lelapa AI is doing. So the beauty in that is they learned all of those things, they built their own, that is Africanized, that they own the intellectual property rights to, and now they're slowly replacing it. And I think that's what we really all need to do. I advocate for using those resources so that even us, we can jigger. Because as a matter of fact, those aren't really their resources, it's our money. It's our taxpayer money. So please allow your children to be curious about the tech industry and learn, and then allow us to come and radicalize them in the right ways to use those things that they have learned, right? And, for the longest times that we've done hackathons, it's competitions in the tech industries. For the longest time, they used to just do surface level competitions where, you come, you build a solution, you win money, you leave, right? But since I've been in the tech industry generally, it has started changing, right? I arrived and I spoke inclusivity and accessibility into those solutions. And now you won't go to a hackathon that doesn't have a rubric that has at least 15 marks for your solution to be able to be used by minority groups. So it's things like that. So allow your kids to be curious, allow them to take those certifications, allow them to get into the corporate jobs so that they can also mess it up from the inside. That's what I personally advocate for. And I know it's scary, especially, with the world that we live in now, but I think our kids are smart enough to also see how these things affect us and what they can do to change it. There's a lot of young people that are building for our kasis. There's a lot of young people that are building for our villages. There's a lot of young people that are building apps that are going to help with your clinic queuing, apps that are going to help, with your banking, all of those things. And they're making it inclusive even to the elderly. So I think let's just put a little bit of trust into our young Black South Africans.
Another one?
Yes.
Just because, I'm sorry, but I'll never step off the government's neck because I feel like they need to do their jobs.
Yeah.
I feel like we as Africans need to require our governments to support African innovation. Why are our governments using Microsoft? Why are they not supporting the local technology that's similar to that?
Yeah.
And I think people from Amandla.mobi could tell you this. When we want technology for digital civic tech initiatives, they don't go to the local organizations like Amandla.mobi, Open Up. They go to European people. Why are you taking our money and paying Europeans to build technology that doesn't understand our local needs and context? We need to push our governments to actually use, not just support here and there, actually be committed to using African developed, designed technologies. And where are we gonna go if our own governments are not supporting us and using our own technologies? Exactly. So for me, there is something there, and I think us in the advocacy space, we need to start doing this a lot more, pushing them to say, why are you contracting a European tech company instead of a local one that actually understands the needs of the people? A lot of technologies are brought down here and they don't work because they're not for us. And we have the people building here, and I want government people, I don't know if there's a government person in here, but I'm talking to you. Please, support African technologies. That's my quick input.
Okay, I can kind of answer that a little bit. I mean, my dissertation was about free and open source software in the ed tech sector, right? So what did I find when I went in there? DBE, the Department of Basic Education folks, didn't know anything about tech at all, right? So they're like, yo, they know nothing. They said, well, what if we take on free and open source software and then the department stops working? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you be in this position? So the thing is, I mean, look, things might have changed by now. They might be getting some people in there that are more fluent. If you're looking at it, there is a free and open source policy preference that was passed in 2007, but it wasn't mandatory. It was optional. Now there's a saying, nobody ever gets fired for going with IBM, which was a saying that was back in the 80s. So if you go with something like free and open source software and the project doesn't work well, then they're gonna say it's the free and open source software. At that point, it's a safe bet for government people. Plus, obviously, I mean, look, Bill Gates came here, I think it was 2016, for the despicable choice of having him for the Nelson Mandela Foundation Person of the Year speech or whatever it was. And like a week later, they're like, we're gonna train 1 million people in Joburg to how to use computers. And what are they using? Of course, they're using Microsoft, right? And he's donating money. So we have those issues. In the Kerala state of India, there is a free and open source software project that started around the year of 2000 where they kicked big tech out. And they've sustained that. It's the best performing state in India in education. And they have been using through and through free and open source software in the public schools. Linux, LibreOffice, all the stuff. So in terms of, that is something I think we should be looking at. As far as the Microsofts and the Amazons, the problem, I think what we should instead be doing as activists is pushing for budget for these projects, but taxing maybe the corporations, I don't know, but like at the end of the day, they are active in pushing some money in the startup space. They do lock in through various means, for example, by giving credits for use on their cloud systems. Hooking people into these certificates, it's a problem. I mean, there is OpenStack, there's free and open source software alternatives, but at the end of the day, I'll just give an example. Wits University has a project called the Simolohong Precinct, and it's funded by Microsoft, IBM, Cisco. What are you gonna say? Now they get a state-of-the-art facility. You know, for these corporations, this is like pennies, right? And that's how capture works. So like the thing is, I think, you know, okay, am I gonna point a finger at somebody and say, oh, you got a job at Microsoft, or, you know, you took money for your tech business from Microsoft? I'm not gonna be like, you know, say anything, right? But at the end of the day, I think ultimately, you know, if we are going to build a digital justice movement here, we do need to identify that as ultimately a problem. And I think we need to try to push to get funds so that can be then democratically decided upon, you know, so we can fund these projects and then they can be free of that conflict of interest.
Thank you for that. I think we have more questions. Yes.
Hi, thank you for that. I want to ask, I'm not in the tech space, or not the digital tech space, I'm in the health space. But when I look at digital technology, kind of starting off as calculating numbers and then opening up to bigger data and then commercializing. So everyone has a computer, everyone has a phone. Our more recent things are going into artificial intelligence, and that's the big newish thing. I just wonder, one of the options for us as Africans is to keep up and make sure that we on top of the artificial intelligence, digital technology. Is there a different route we could follow that isn't the AI route, that is some other better way of technology or further on the kind of timeline of technological improvement that isn't AI, that we're not that the rest of the world is not thinking of, but that we can kind of create and build as our own?
Can we write with a pen and a paper instead of?
So I'm going to answer this from the perspective of, a person that's been in tech for a minute. So I'm going to try and explain artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence doesn't start with ChatGPT, right? So what artificial intelligence actually is we are building a tool that's going to do something that we don't want to do anymore, right? So for instance, a clock is artificial intelligence because we didn't want to continue telling time from the stars anymore, right? A car is artificial intelligence, right? A manufacturing machine is artificial intelligence. So what's happening now, though, is from the first industrial revolution up until where we are now, artificial intelligence evolves, right? So, the computer, when Alan Turing started with his, binaries and, computing, then it started evolving in a more rapid manner because we had this machine that was processing very large amounts of data in very quick seconds using, very small gigahertz, right? And so what this really is just like the evolution of garbage in, garbage out, right? So I will always say this. We need to build what works for us and stop using what other people are trying to build for us, right? Because, look, you can't shy away. You can decide in your organization that you're doing away with a chatbot, for instance. You're going to put in you're going to hire 500 agents that are going to, deal with your customer support system. But there's going to come a time where you're going to want to make that process efficient for yourself, right? And that's just what artificial intelligence is. You are telling a piece of technology what to do to make life easy for you, right? And the best way to do it for ourselves so that it works in a way that is removed from, your neo-colonial or your colonial ways of doing things is to build it ourselves, right? And that's why I will always say, you can go to Meta AI and type, a lesbian warrior, and you will never find anyone that looks like you because it wasn't built by us, right? And that's why it's so important to support initiatives that, us Africans are building, right? Like your Amandla.mobi, your Lelapa AI. Mike was talking about the Tshimologong precinct, right? Yes, it's funded by, big corporates. But do you know that the first insanely successful Black woman-owned game development company came out of Tshimologong precinct? We have games that are developed by Black women that are owned by Black women, because of such things. And that's why it's important to also take advantage. If you want to loot, go loot Microsoft, guys. I'm telling you, you see that small business of yours, if you want to go loot and go do your social entrepreneurship, I'm for it. Yes, we are working towards, removing them completely. But, right now they have the money. We have the intellect, right? Use that money to build something for us so that they can vamoose. I don't know, man. That's what I personally believe. Like, if you want to loot them, build, they must go. But build for ourselves is the best way possible. You can quote me, it's fine. Angisabi umuntu.
Got a question over there. Oh, I think it was this lady. Oh, sorry, here and then there. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabina, and I have two quick questions. The first one, I keep hearing our panelists talking about the opportunities that are there in building systems and building tools. I'm a mother to a son, grade 11, who is busy building tools and failing in school, and it's something that we constantly are fighting for, because now I keep saying, I don't know whatever you're building, what you're going to do with it, because I've never heard of opportunities coming to us at grassroots level to lift up a black boy. So I'm just gonna run through the second one, which is the technology divide. I want to give an example of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're divided there, because there are other platforms that I can never ever use because I don't know what is going on there. Are we at any point going to build our own tools or systems as Africans and not rely on something that is coming from abroad, something maybe that speaks to us, because there's a lot of division amongst us when it comes to those kind of spaces, because there are spaces that sometimes we just log in and you realize that there's no space for me here, and you never ever go to again.
Yes. All right. I can do quickly. So the first one is maybe your son is building on Facebook. We don't know. You could be doing that in his room. But does anyone remember Mixit?
Yes.
See?
So it's South African.
Africans can do it. We just need someone to support. Not just someone, but the money, the right rooms, the funders, but also the people to use it. I think we Africans also need to be open and willing to use our own technologies. And I think sometimes they fail because they don't have the marketing budget to reach us, the people who could potentially use it. Because Facebook has billions, so they can reach us easily, and they can promise us that, you know, we'll have access to the global, but at what cost, they don't tell you. Well, they do tell you in the terms and conditions that you don't read. So I think there is lots of opportunities. I think she's better. Yeah, you could answer that one, but I think there is lots of technologies that are being built on this continent. And technologies that are actually for us, for our own challenges. I think there's someone in Nigeria that has built technology that works when electricity goes out, because that's his situation. He understood that I need technology that will work when I don't have power. When Microsoft comes, they might not understand that. But a person who's building from the lock, what's lacking is someone who's backing him to actually make it more successful. So, yeah.
I think just as a quick example, the way a whole lot of people started downloading Upscrolled because they were pissed off with the US and stuff and left, I think, even Blue Sky, the way people went to Blue Sky. So if people get to know, and I think most of the time if it's possible and people know it, they're very willing to support so long as they don't think that it's going to inconvenience them too much and so forth. You know, but you need to talk about jobs.
I think, do you know that in Russia they don't use Google? They have their own. It's Yandex. So they have their own Yandex. They have their own Uber Eats. They don't have Uber Eats. They don't use Zoom. They don't use WhatsApp. They don't use YouTube. So it's possible. It is very possible. Ne? And your son could be building, I don't know, my next drone, who knows? So I think for that, I understand as a parent being worried about the education, because I love school, so yeah, I understand, right? And you know, that's what my team and I at Queers Code usually help with as well. So I tutor as well. So when I tutor, I simultaneously mentor and give career guidance, right? So for instance, there's a girl in grade 11 now that is currently, while simultaneously, you know, doing grade 11, she's trying to build her own MRI machine that doesn't damage black bodies. Yeah, because apparently she wants to be a neuro what, yeah, you know, those big things. So that's the thing, right? It's like, yes, we are going to do trigonometry today, but in the last 10 sessions of trigonometry, tell me how far you are with your research. You know, it's things like that. We offer mentorship. I'm mentoring 3 people. They're sitting here today. They're also building insane things. So allow your son to build, and you can connect with us, and you know, we'll see how we can assist in that. And for grassroots, we try by all means, but there's not too many of us. When I got into the tech industry, it was hard for me to even find a black woman that could be my mentor. I didn't have a mentor when I got into the tech industry because I couldn't find anyone that could relate to me, right? And so I then decided that I will be the person that people relate to. And so we are willing to go to the villages. We do go to the villages. We do go to the Kasis. I mean, every year, you know, sometimes we're part of this thing called She's Team, where we have like about 500 plus young girls, and we get them into rooms and we teach them like basic digital literacy skills. I mean, at one point, I always say that my proudest moments at Queers Code was teaching a 67-year-old grandma how to create an email address. And now she has an email address. That for me, my job was done. That was it for me. You understand? Yeah. Yeah, she emailed me. Yeah. But also, you know, the beautiful thing. So the beautiful thing about that was she specifically needed her email address to work out her pension things. And so then we further assisted her in that. So she got her pension, and, you know, she's living fine now. She's beautiful and, you know, living nice. So we also would like, if you are an organization that deals with elders, we would like to collaborate with you and go teach elders how to use WhatsApp, and go teach elders how to protect themselves from banking scams. From banking scams. Yeah, they must bother you with those stickers. Like, you know, they must be here. Yes, so, you know, we do that. And we do that because, you know, unfortunately, we can't retreat back from technology and go back to sending, you know, pigeons. So, you know, we need to just make sure that they are protected and they know what they're working with. So we try to work with a lot of other grassroots organizations, and we are here. We are not a big team. I promise. I own Queers Code by myself. I have 3 mentees, and that's it. But we do our best, and we have other people that can help. Yes.
Hello.
We have there, and then we'll finish with Sipho, please, guys. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, we'll have you. So there. Okay, the last 5 people, please, guys. I know this is a fantastic conversation, but we also don't want the food to get cold, and you can talk to everybody during that time. So, sir.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nokwande Sihlali. I'm very intrigued by what you were saying about designing apps for the specific audience that's going to be consuming it. So we work in the former Bantustans. We have an issue with mappability of land, where you have to map the land, you have to get a title deed, it has to go to the cadastre, and then it's there at the deeds registry. Now, in the former Bantustan, sometimes you don't measure land in a market-based way. Sometimes you have engagements about it. Ukuthi mina ngihlala from the river to the mountain to the. That's how somebody. Yes, but that's how somebody will measure or map their land. We have issues with mappability. So, are you having conversations about that as well, about how data is captured in South Africa, because it encroaches on customary law. And when you encroach on customary law, you encroach on black people. So, yeah, I just wanted to know about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's have all the questions. And
Okay.
then, guys, can you just mark? I'm sure you can answer. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sipho Sibisi. I'm from the organization called Lucia Initiative Platform, working with Wits University, University of Johannesburg, and the Central Johannesburg College. one thing that I want to talk about is that I'll be part with our organization. We are going to be part of the supporting structure. How so? Because we are working with students. I think the lack of information that we are having in our communities, it has to start with by teaching and talking and having a platform with the students from the higher institutions. Let's say maybe we can even mix it up with grade 11, grade 12, so that they'll have this information so that we won't have such challenges moving forward. So I'm here to say I will try by all means to collaborate so that I will give you the platform in all our programs. We have the programs in young women in construction, young women in media, where we are working with Constitution Hill, young women in agriculture, and then also young women in law. So those are the programs that we have under our belt. So that will help to fast track whatever that you want to transform from the information to the community, which is very important, especially if we can implement it in the educational level. And then we'll try by all means to make sure that the Department of Higher Education will be part of us. Number two, we'll make sure that the Department of Science and Technology under Dr. Blade Nzimande should be part of such. So in our next program that we are going to have on the 8th of May, I promise that I'm going to invite you so that you'll be part of us at CJC, whereby we'll be doing the young women in construction, whereby we'll be discussing a lot about construction. We're teaming up with Wits University School of Construction and Civil Engineering, including University of Johannesburg and Central Johannesburg College. So I will definitely make sure that you are part and parcel of that. So that was an input. Thank you.
Thank you so much. These are the connections that we want. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this inspiring presentations. I'm a content developer. I am into the space and artist, and thank you for enlightening us of our, just to be aware that our content might be taken away and might be changed, and we might lose everything, and probably we can make money. But the point that I want to make is that I'm surprised that in the past we had nothing, but we achieved so much. Democracy. We didn't have guns, we didn't have anything, but we managed. And now we have everything, we have every money, we have all the opportunities, but we achieve so little. And isn't the time that we ask ourselves? Maybe we look deep down now. Maybe we create things like think tanks. Because some of the information is so sacred that if it goes out quickly, it loses impact. And maybe that's why we're not moving as fast as we want to or we aim to. So maybe we need to have some sort of a strategy, because what you're saying is scary. Someone said, I'm scared. It's so scary. And it's so scary that what is happening in the world, as Africans, are we ready? And we're going to start fighting among ourselves and siding with the enemy. Why? Because we don't know ourselves first. Mental or psychological decolonization or colonization, it runs deep. So thank you. I'm happy we're gonna find time to mingle and to exchange contact. I go by the name Dr. Sasa.
Dumelang, o amimfa mo pela lona ke Menkepile, community activist ko Alexandra and Rabirish Cadet community. Ne ke kopa o tseba gore this technology e ya lena e. Anna, have you designed a special technology tool that can assist the deaf and the blind and the deaf and dumb, and also libaba attending special school. I'm very concerned hore ba sokola ka this technology tool. Please, rena le mathata a serious, even in hospitals. We've got blind patients that doesn't have any tools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who was, and then that was, yeah. Sipo?
I feel bad that there's new hands, but I do have to ask them the movement question, right? So we are here because we want to catalyze movements. That's our thing. And I think it's, there's like lots of ingredients, right, from what everyone has said. But it would be really helpful in kind of your closing remarks, all three of you, including you, Michael, because you spoke about this. So, I mean, so our logic about how change happens is, yes, it's fantastic individuals doing all of the fantastic things you are all doing. But then it's also like a movement, right, that must kind of come together. And so I'm curious, because technology is like so nebulous, and it's so big, and for so many of us sounds so complex. What does a digital justice movement look like? What are its key characteristics and key demands right now? Because unfortunately, we don't have like another 3 years, to take Sipo through a coding, which would be lovely, a coding kind of degree. Right now, there is so much that is happening. And so what does this movement look like? What does it take to build it? What are its key characteristics? What are its key demands and actions? And does it exist somewhere? Maybe we can go fetch it.
Thank you. That's a beautiful question. And a wonderful, I need you to answer this question like as the last question, all of you, for the panel.
Thank you so much. My name is Moikesi, and I come from Year 2 Collective. I just wanted to know, because for the past 2 weeks, I was part of comrades who are trying to learn what is it to build community in a digital age. So, at the current moment, we are bombarded with what comes from the north. Like everything comes from the north. There's nothing that we can or we have ever created from the south that goes that way. But my question is, what is it that we can do as the civil society that can counter what exactly is coming right now? We can see what is happening in Iran. We can see what is happening in other worlds. But we don't have what we can do as African society. So as Year 2 society, we are coming up with what we can do as African society to counter what is coming to us. So currently we have what we call community networks. Is there anything that we can support community networks? Because that is what we are campaigning for. Okay. We need to have community networks because we don't have to rely on what the whole world relies on. Yeah. We can have our own.
Yeah.
Is there anything that
so,
we can
please
do?
allow them to answer. Thank you so much, Futi. Yeah. So you have to tell us real quick about the question of whether we have anything for the visually impaired, etc.?
Okay, I think, let me just like, quick. Mapping technology, yes, it exists. There is our own ASI version of Google Maps. Yes, we use that in hackathons now. We no longer use Google Maps APIs, by the way. We use South African made ones. I forgot what it's called. I think they'll remind me. And they can actually map informal settlements. So you know how Uber Eats can't go to like deep in the Kasi because it can't see it? Yes, I think it's Locate My Kasi, if I remember well. Yes, so we do, and we are building more. The question this side was on visual impaired. Okay, so if a visually impaired or a deaf person has a mobile phone, they can use it without needing to look at it or hear it. I think the gap there might be learning how to do that. We can help with that. There are tools for that. And we are also trying to build our own, versions of those tools as well. That's why I always emphasize inclusive and accessible technology. And for us to build our own, we need to have them in the room so that they can tell us exactly what their needs are. For instance, one hackathon that we did in Bloom, some student from CUT came up with an idea of a bamboo walking stick that speaks Venek into your ear. So the current walking sticks, they can tell you direction and stuff, but if there's a tree root in the way, it doesn't tell you, right? So, but his stick vibrates and it tells you in your own language what is in the road, right? So we are building it. Deploying is another issue, but we'll get there. But if those patients do need assistance into learning the tools that exist now so that they can, have their welfare taken care of, we can do our best to come and assist with that because every phone has a voice activator and, all of that. So we can help with that.
Are we doing like closing kind of? Okay,
You
all right.
are all doing the movement question.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna get to the questions about what to do, but I'm gonna go through some of the things I still heard. So Lalapa AI, I supervised a master's student. Last year, we tried to reach out to them and ask them questions. I do know that they're for profit. They never responded, right? So I do have some questions and concerns about that, and I don't know where they intend on going, but it's worth reminding ourselves that those who are seeking profit may start off on a nice human rights vibe in the beginning, but as they get bigger, their tune changes, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. As far as taking money from Microsoft and those individuals go, or those corporations go, it's not looting them, right? I mean, that's something you might tell yourself when you're taking the money, but they're giving that money out there. They want that black woman startup that they can point to and say, look, we're helping black people. Meanwhile, Wits is sitting there and saying, well, we're getting millions of dollars from Microsoft. So this is a war contractor that is actively aiding and abetting genocide. It's looting the global south. It's knee-deep with police. It's knee-deep with prisons. I also exposed their stuff at Al Jazeera on prisons. In Africa, in countries like Morocco, where they're torturing prisoners, they have no bounds. They have no limits. They're evil. They're as evil as it gets. And yes, like I said before, I'm not gonna be like, oh, you made this video game company, shame on you, took money from Microsoft. But they're doing it specifically to make sure that they have colonial dependency, that they capture the space where the grass is green, right? And it's a public relations exercise for them. And if you even look at with the good parts of US aid, this aid, it's a reminder what happened with Doge, right? Like you take money from them and you gain that dependency. So now we're looking at getting money from them instead of getting money from where we need to get it from, right? So as far as Russia goes, I mean, one of the things about Russia is they're deeply authoritarian society, and they banned YouTube, they banned Facebook, right? Now, they do have with Yandex and some of their social media a culture there, but unless you want to put everybody under surveillance and firewall the country, you're going to have to deal with alternatives. Well, what are the alternatives to big social media? Zukisa mentioned Blue Sky, right? Again, Blue Sky is for profit, but the idea would be decentralization. Now, you have structural barriers here. Like, structural barriers would be, for example, big social made a very conscious choice that they don't want to interoperate. What is interoperability in social media? It means that if you have an account with a Facebook, you can't share with somebody on a TikTok or any other network, right? Now, supposedly the Europeans were going to step in to do a fix on this. It's called the Digital Markets Act, but they set the threshold so high that they basically envision some mandatory interoperability, and then they're going to try to create a more competitive capitalist space. So what you can do, I mean, if you're looking at some of these initiatives, all right, yeah, so obviously you want to be creating your own businesses or your own initiatives, let's put it that way, and you know, trying to do your own thing. But at the end of the day, I mean, most of this is just spaza shops. They're digital spaza shops. And if they own everything, they own the semiconductors, they own the data centers, they own the platforms, they own search, they own everything. They own everything. That means everybody's got to pay them every time they want to use this stuff. So there's no getting rid of the elephant in the room of structural dependency. So yeah, you can try to develop things in parallel, and there are initiatives like Blue Sky. There's the Fediverse, which is interoperable social media, but you can't scale up because they've already colonized this space, and there's too many structural barriers, right? In terms of Yetu, I just want to note this, that I did talk to Mark Weinberg. I was working with Mark, who many of you may know that passed away, and the initiative to you know, free and affordable data, I was like, Mark, you know, but what happens when you give free and affordable data to everybody? Now, I support it as a human rights thing, all right? Who could I ever be to say to somebody, you shouldn't have data? But the fact of the matter is, if we can push a button and give free and affordable data to everybody in the country tomorrow, arguably, that would just benefit the American corporations, because the next thing they're going to do is they're going to be on social media, they're going to be on Netflix, so you still have to simultaneously push back against the digital colonialism. Well, Mark was like, yeah, but our donors aren't going to want that, right? So Mike, would you not want to work with me? I said, yeah, no, I'm not going to work with you if this is, you know, if you're going to pull that punch. So it goes to show the influence of money in this space is really a problem. It's tough, it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. And then in terms of what to do, you know, in terms of what a digital justice movement looks like, and what to do, I mean, look, there's a lot going on in this space, but I think that public enemy number 1, 2, and 3 is the United States tech empire. And there needs to be vocal opposition to it, and that includes not just the corporations themselves, but the intellectual class in the United States that has built what's called digital justice. These are people like Timnit Gebru, who helped push Google start research facilities in Africa. It's people like Cory Doctorow, with his enshittification on Financial Times. He goes around pushing antitrust. Well, what's antitrust? It's fair and competitive capitalism, right? If you actually look closely to what these folks are saying, they can't just pin the tail on the donkey. Where's the American empire, and why aren't you opposing it? So I think, you know, there's a lot to be done, and it's not just one thing, but I think there needs to be pushback against the American big tech empire, because if they continue to own and control the core stuff of the digital ecosystem, we're toast. And I just want to go back to the initial thing I was discussing at the beginning. Our window of opportunity on these things is closing, because the environment is heating up, and we don't have time to mess around and say we're going to be soft on capitalism or we need reforms. We need to be pushing very hard at system change.
Thank you, Mike. Melissa, final, the movement question. Yes.
Okay, hi.
This is not a cop-out, but the movement starts like this. I think this is already a start, and we're already working on something here. But I think there's also another thing that we need to consider, that the movement is something that would be deeply uncomfortable. We have to ask ourselves serious, uncomfortable questions. And we have to make decisions. Do we take money from these organizations? Do we work with these people? You know, we have to ask all these questions. Who do we partner with? You know, we have to make all these moral decisions. But the big one for me is how, not unorganized, but how we are really not using our strength in numbers as Africa. One of the reasons that social media and big tech follows rules in EU is because the EU moves as one single entity. That, you know, they take them to court together, you know? We don't do that. We allow Google to come here because, you know, Namibia said, hey, you're doing some illegal stuff in our country, we don't want you here. South Africa will say, it's fine, you can come create your business here. Why are we as Africans allowing that? Where are our leaders? Why are they not, you know, talking to each other to say, hey, this big
Those
tech...
ice boys for empire.
So, yeah, that would be my big question, that we are really sleeping on our strength in numbers as Africans. We need to come together. We can't have these conversations as South Africans alone without including Zimbabweans, without including Kenyans. We are all going to suffer the same fate because these people don't care which African country you're from. And it will affect us. So I think we really, the AU really needs to do something. They need to come together. Why is the AU there? They should be doing something about this. Actually, don't get me started on the AU. I'm done. It's okay.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
Final word?
In closing.
Sorry, guys, in closing.
In closing, I think the first step of the movement is...
And Kogetso, can I have you so that...
in closing, I think the first step of our movement is to check our privilege. We are at a point where we need to work with what we have. And we need to make sure that in our radicalizing the movement itself, we check our privilege. I was privileged enough to go through high school with a computer in my house. And so I knew through research that something like Linux as an open source operating system existed. I had that privilege. Somebody else doesn't. Somebody else doesn't have the privilege to deny, you know, getting an NQF level 6 qualification that's funded by Public Enemy number 1, 2, 3. And I think once we go through that hard process of looking inwards and seeing what our privileges are that might stop somebody from grassroots level that doesn't have the same privilege from achieving something that we have gone past through already, then we're not gonna go anywhere in life. I cannot sit here with 10 Microsoft Office qualifications, certifications, and 5 AWS certifications that have gotten me a job that was able to provide for my mother, that was able to retire my mother, that is able to sustain me through my activism, that's able to pay for that activism and say that her son shouldn't do it. I have to check myself. And I think that's the most important starting point of the movement.
I think that's a really great place to end. We don't...
So I think I'll just, on our behalf, I'll just say, Enkosi siyabonga, to quote Melissa, this is how movements
are created.
And I think the encouraging thing, even though you're all depressed, thank you so much, the encouraging thing is that there are seeds, you know, of possibility. And it's been really interesting to listen to you. I think Michael pushing us to be critical, right? Because that's really important. We have to be absolutely critical and question and question and question. And then I think both Melissa and Monty were, you know, I think showing us what's already kind of like
The possibilities.
from the ground. So thank you. And thank you, our facilitator. Just one one little thing. So it's not mandatory that you should leave your name if you're interested in being connected or contacted, but if you choose so, there is a paper moving around. And then I think if you want to connect with the colleagues, then let us know how you can connect with them. But you can also either connect with Amandla and Tikano, and we'll link you up. Yeah, thank you.
And on that note, there is some food, folks. Thank you so much. You're an amazing audience. Yeah,